So now I'd like to take the pleasure of introducing my dear friend Maria Reis Habito. Maria, are you out there?
I'm here.
Oh, great. Okay, welcome, welcome. So as I said, I'm just delighted to introduce Maria. I've known her for a long, long time. She is a Sanbo Zen teacher at Maria Kanan Zen Center in Dallas, Texas. And she's the guiding teacher of the Sophia Zen Center in South Bend, Indiana. Her resume is very long and profound, so I won't go into all the detail, but just some highlights. She's the International Program Director of the Museum of World Religions in Taipei and the personal translator of Dharma Master, and forgive me if I mispronounce this, Maria,
Xindao.
Yeah, or Shefu. And she translates his writings and his Zen courses held in Europe and Taiwan. She's the director of the Elijah Interfaith Institute, and she's taught all around the world, including numerous times in Israel with interfaith groups. They're Israelis and Pakistanis, and she's done a lot of interfaith work. It's probably easier to list the languages that Maria does not speak than the languages that she does. She's multilingual. Let's just leave it at that. And then we will open it up to you.
So thank you so much, Scott, for the introduction and for the invite, first of all, to have me speak to my dear Mountain Cloud community again. It was really very touching when we came to visit about a month ago, Ruben and myself, very touching to have this warm welcome from your community and to sit with you. And it gives me a lot of joy just to see you there in the Zendo, and also all of those of you who are here and joining us by internet. So it's a big joy that we have this occasion to be here together, this unique occasion. In my talk today, I would like to actually speak about the Koan Mu. And I imagine that perhaps you have heard many talks on the Koan Mu already. But, you know, there is a lot of repetition in life. And you also listen perhaps to music of Mozart or Beethoven or whoever your favorite composer is many times. And there's always a new nuance or perhaps note, which I hope that will strike a bell with you. As most of you probably remember from the introductory talks, there are 3 ingredients that we need to, or that are recommended to have when we want to progress on our spiritual path in Chan or in Zen. And they are the great trust, then the great doubt, and the third one is the great determination. And there's a beautiful quote by Yamada Roshi where he says, the great trust, the great doubt, and the great determination, these are like 3 legs of a tripod. And it's uncertain if we can accomplish the Dharma if one of these 3 legs is missing. If all 3 are present, however, we would be more likely to miss the ground with a hammer than we would be to miss enlightenment. That's encouraging. So we would be more likely to miss the ground with a hammer than we would be to miss enlightenment. And so, of course, this great faith or great trust, as it's called, is our trust that we have this potential and that all beings have the potential to wake up. That's what we recite in our Bodhisattva vows, of course. So this trust that we really have it in us to experience this boundless dimension of our being, which is there from the very beginning beyond any time and any space. And so that trust or that faith also implies the trust into our in our teachers or the patriarchs, those who have passed on the teaching and the experience from Buddha Shakyamuni until today. And so when we are firmly rooted in this great trust, then our practice can go on even though we may have experienced rough times, as we all do. And then, of course, with the great trust comes as the partner, the great doubt. Okay, I know that I have this Buddha nature, but if I really experience that, can I go deeper in my experience? What does it really mean? And Dogen is one of our teachers who was really very much taken over by this great doubt. He became a monk at the age of 8 after losing his parents. You probably know the story. And he was practicing in the monastery and saw all these nuns and monks practicing from morning to night around himself. And he asked himself seriously this question, honestly: if we all have Buddha nature already, that's the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, then why would we have to practice? And he couldn't find anyone who could give a clear answer on that question. And so to settle that issue for himself, he decided to sail to China and look for a teacher there who could answer this question. And at the time, that was not an easy decision. You know, you had to take a ship, and the ocean could be very dangerous. You would endanger your own life. But that was the kind of doubt that propelled him forward to really find an answer to his question, an experience that would clarify that for him. And he came to the Jingde temple, as it is called, and his teacher at the time was Master Wu Jing. I'm shortening the story here a little bit. And the master said to him, drop body and mind, drop body and mind. So we don't know how Dogen took that. Maybe he took it as a koan and was sitting with that. Drop body and mind, drop body and mind. And then something happened to him. His body and mind completely dropped off, as he said. And excited, he went to his teacher and said, I've seen it. He dropped off body and mind. So drop off this body, this mind that keeps us in this notion of the small I, me, mine. And this notion is often so deeply tied up with our body, with our bodily existence. So can we get rid? Can we let go of all of this and experience a reality that is much wider, much larger than this? And Dogen came back to Japan, and he had found the answer to our question. Often we say, I have a Zen practice, right? We don't say, I am my practice. So there is a subject there that is practicing, and then there is the object of practice. But Dogen, in his experience, looked through that and said, as we are practicing, we are already the full manifestation of this Buddha nature that we are looking for. So as we are sitting here, as we are listening, it's already fully manifest, it's already there. This doesn't mean that we give up our practice. The practice goes on infinitely, as Dogen says. But we have to realize that we already fully showing that what we are seeking after, or that we want to or hope to experience more deeply. And so then in our Sanbo Zen tradition, we combine both practices. Dogen, actually this temple that he visited was the temple where the Master Bansho, the compiler of the Book of Serenity, or the Shoyo-Woke, also resided. And so Dogen was heavily influenced by this Soto approach to practice, and passed on that tradition to Japan. It's called the Soto tradition, or sitting only. And that tradition was founded in the Tang Dynasty, and that's not so important, but the importance is that this tradition emphasizes sitting only. It's also called silent illumination. And this is something what we also practice in our temple in Taiwan when we are there. To silently contemplate this kokoro, in Japanese, or shin, this core of our being, this heart of our being, which is completely wide and open, as Bodhidharma says, in other words, empty and luminous. And in that light of the kokoro, of the heart, we can see the same quality in everything in this whole universe. Emptiness and luminosity. And so then we just rest in that quality of our own heart, or our own original face, and perceive it, realize it in the whole universe without any boundaries. So that's the emphasis of the Soto tradition. Now the Rinzai tradition is the one that works with koans, or emphasizes the koans very centrally. And as you know, Sambo Zen, we combine both traditions. So the Rinzai tradition was brought to Japan by Eisai also in the 12th century. The founders actually of our Sambo Zen, there was Harada Sogaku, who was originally a Soto monk, and Yasutani Hoshi, who also was a Soto monk. But they felt that this quietly illuminating our heart and mind and seeing the light and everything around us could have the risk of making us perhaps complacent or making the student complacent and not challenging us enough to go deeper in our practice. And this is why they emphasized the importance of this study with the koan. And in Sanbo Zen, customarily, when we do retreats in Japan or even in Europe, it's customary to start, or when the Boshi comes, as many of you know, it's customary to start with a talk on the koan mu. Koan, you may have heard that koan, gong an in Chinese means a public place. It's usually a dialogue between a teacher and a student, or between two Zen masters, but there is some point that is given us for our consideration. And it's a point that's usually not or never really graspable by our conceptual mind. Because the point of the koan is exactly to cut through that or break through that conceptual mind to our dualistic way of thinking. And so the koan then points out this world of what I described as luminosity and emptiness. It shows it as it is, without these filters that we usually have in our mind, which are these filters of the I, me, mine. And we can't really blame ourselves for these because they are gradually installed in us as we are already small children, right? A baby doesn't have this clear understanding that there is a difference between the mother and the child and so on. But gradually, by learning, the children realize I'm the subject and there are objects around me, and this is how these filters get installed in our heart and mind. But so the koan helps us to break through these filters and see the world as it really is without them, to find our true nature in that world that has no limits from the beginning, that is wide and open, as Bodhidharma says. And every koan is asking us the same question: what is your true self? Have you experienced that? At the same time, it is also that expression, that very manifestation of that true self, of this really wide and unbounded reality that arises fresh and new every instant. So it depends on the student. Some of you prefer the just sitting, the Soto just sitting method, and other students at some time feel that they might be ready and then they would like to try out a koan. And so, as I said, the first koan that is given to every student is the koan mu. And when Father Lassalle gave me the koan mu after, I think I practiced perhaps for a year or a little more, I was very proud that I was given such a chance to work with the koan. And it's contained in the Mumon Kan, or the Gateless Gate collection, or the barrier without the gate. But Shifu Dharma Master always says it's the barrier of the gate of Mu. So Mu is that gate that helps us to break or enter that barrier. And all those 48 koans that are contained in the Gateless Gate were put together by Master Mumon. Ekai is his other name. Ekai means the opening of wisdom. And Mumon practiced with Mu for 6 years until he was able to have a great breakthrough. And Mumon gives this commentary on the case, which is meant to invite all students to take on this practice with Mu. And he says the following. Just a sec. For the practice of Zen, you must pass the barrier set up by the ancient masters of Zen. To attain marvelous enlightenment, you must completely extinguish all the delusive thoughts of the ordinary mind. If you have not passed the barrier and have not extinguished delusive thoughts, you are a phantom haunting the weeds and the trees. And so the barrier, of course, is this ordinary way of thinking and all the limited perspectives that result of it. And we could, if we wanted to give it a structure, we could give our ordinary way of thinking the structure of the triangle, right? There's a subject here, there's the object there, and then there is something that is on top, whether that is the divine God, or for some people it's the leader. In Japan, it was the Tenno, or for German people, it was unfortunately Hitler. So we have these structures in our ordinary mind. And the koan breaks through these structures. And Mu is in particular effective in doing that. And when we can really, really put ourselves into Mu, be Mu, not do Mu as something that's outside of us, but really deeply enter Mu and feel at home in Mu, then gradually, these barriers, they become thinner and thinner and break down and disappear. Shifu always says, when you practice with Mu, you have to enter the samadhi of Mu. The samadhi of Mu, this wide openness of Mu. And that will really take away all the hindrances of your mind. Everything will be gone if you enter deeply into the samadhi of Mu. And here is Mumon, who continues his commentary saying, so those who have passed that barrier, those who have let go of this structure in the mind, they are not able to see Joshu face to face, but also walk hand in hand with the whole descending line of Zen masters and be eyebrow to eyebrow with them. You will see with the same eye they see with. You will hear with the same ear they hear with. Wouldn't that be a wonderful joy? So when we break through that barrier, we realize really that there hasn't been a barrier in the beginning. There has never been one. We're completely one with Joshu, the patriarchs, the Buddhas, Jesus, all the people from the past and all people from the present and from the future. It's quite marvelous, but everything, this whole existence is right here at this very moment, and there is no hindrance there whatsoever. And so given that, Joshu says, Mumon says, isn't there anyone here who would like to pass the koan? But now we have to come to the koan, and here's the case. Among us, Joshu in all earnestness, has a dog Buddha nature or not? Joshu says Mu. And again, most of you will know that Joshu was one, Chaozhou in Chinese, was one of the most famous Zen masters in China. He lived in the 8th century and supposed to have lived up at the age of 120. He had a very deep enlightenment experience already at the age of 18 under Nanzen, and then continued his practice for another 40 years under him. And then humbly, he traveled around the whole of China to study with Asta masters, to deepen his initial experience. And he only settled down at the age of 80 to teach students. And so sometimes I feel like I don't have the age, I'm not yet 80 years old. So am I even qualified to open my mouth here? So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But this was Joshu's earnestness. And Dogen himself thought of Joshu as one of the most important teachers, even though he didn't have that many students, but part of that also had to do with the time in China, which at the time was, there was a persecution of Buddhism and there were lots of conflicts and wars going on. But now to come back to the case, among us, Jo, in all earnestness. And so I think we can imagine this monk right there, like Dogen, he has known this teaching of the Lotus Sutra, that all beings have Buddha nature. And probably like Dogen, he was also inspired and puzzled by it. So while he's practicing in the monastery, he cannot help but think, does this teaching really make sense? All sentient beings have Buddha nature, even something as ordinary as a dog? And if the teaching makes sense, then the monk realizes earnestly, I don't really understand it. And so the question he's asking Joshu is not frivolous at all. for the monk, it's of utmost concern to him. And Joshu's answer is really essential to him to continue his practice. So really, everything depends on Joshu's answer. And perhaps by comparison, we could imagine a similar scenario. Perhaps a tragedy that strikes unexpectedly on a personal or on a very grand scale. And we have lots of these natural catastrophes, pandemics, wars, and so on. And when we see that, we could earnestly ask ourselves the question, is God love? So we know it theoretically, perhaps if we are Christians or if we are belong to the Jewish tradition, that we know about God's compassion and God's love. But is that something we have really experienced? Can we say that without any doubt? When I first came to Japan as a doctoral student and was practicing there, that was a serious question for me. Is God really love? And have I experienced that? And I went so far, since I was used to going to Doksan with Father Lassalle, that one day when I was in my little church in Kyoto and I saw that people go to confession, I thought maybe if I go to confession, I will get some bigger clarity on this point. And so I went there and said to the father, I don't know the prayers to say for confession, but I have a question. He said, what's your question? And I said, is God love? I have to say, I've never experienced that. I don't know if I have really experienced that. And so like Joshu, this father gave a very wise answer. He said to me, God, the Holy One is love. And he will, or the Holy One will help you experience that and see that clearly one day. And with that, I felt really relieved. Okay, I will experience that clearly one day. And I went back and felt very grateful. But there's another question that I had after the Holocaust, the tragedy of the Holocaust. People had a similar question, not about whether God is love, but whether God is all powerful. And I had a very dear Jewish friend, Muriel Pincus, a lady who lived here in Dallas and was very active in interfaith dialogue. And she said she was very troubled. She lost lots of family in the Holocaust, and she was really troubled to imagine this teaching or try to understand this teaching that God is all powerful. And there had been theology after the Holocaust. There had been conferences like that I think are ongoing, and Jewish scholars have, or some of them have decided that this teaching of God is all powerful is not something that people have to believe or have to maintain to be Jewish. And my friend Muriel said it was a huge relief for her when she knew that she didn't have to hold on to that teaching. So then she was open to experience and search earnestly like Joshu, like the monk himself. But so now after all of this excursus, we turn to the koan. So does the dog have Buddha nature? And the answer that Joshu gives is mu. Mu, I guess that's how Joshu says it, mu. And literally, mu in Chinese means, wu in Chinese means, no, don't say that, or that's not it, no, something like that. So is Joshu saying the dog does not have Buddha nature? But then that again would contradict the teaching in the Lotus Sutra, right? And Joshu wouldn't go as far as denying that teaching. So then what's the meaning of mu? And that's exactly this barrier that we have to break through. And of course, there is also some other time when Joshu asks the same question, says, yes, ooh, the dog has it. So how do we break through this barrier? So in the Rinzai tradition in Japan, the koan is usually given to a monk or a practitioner without any explanations. And then they sit on their cushions all day long. The session starts at 3 a.m. and often it goes until 9 or 10 in the evening. And they are hit with a stick when they seem to not be concentrating in their meditation. And they are dragged to the Doksan's room, if they want to or not, if they want to see the master or not, and they have to give an answer. But in Sanbo Zen, it's a little bit different. And this is why teachers in the Sanbo tradition usually give their first teisho on Mu to help the student. And here it's again helpful to look at the commentary of Mumen, who says, to attain marvelous enlightenment, you must completely extinguish all delusive thoughts of the ordinary mind. And so I talked about these delusive thoughts, this triangle in our head, but there are of course many other delusive thoughts. They're basically the thoughts that take us away from the here and now. Whether we think about good things, noble things, something perhaps we want to do after the sit, or something we did yesterday. All these things usually come up during our sits. And if there is a troubling thought that comes back all the time, then of course you go and you see the teacher and you see if you can find some help, or if you need somebody professional to help you. But usually in Sanbo Zen, we say when these thoughts come, you sit like the mountain, like the Fujiyama covered in snow, and you let all these thoughts pass away or pass by, not holding on to them. And then when we go to Doksan and we try to bring our answer to Mu, we will find out pretty soon that all the answers that we are not quite certain about or that are somewhat conceptual will not be accepted. And that was, of course, was also my experience when I was teaching, or when I was studying in a big Rinzai temple in Kyoto, where my research center was located. And I had a special permission to sit with the monks in the evening and then to go to Doksan with the master, lining up after the monks and then ringing a bell before going in and making my bows and giving the master a my answer to Mu. And really what I got out of the master every time was just shaking of the head. That was everything that I could elicit, nothing else. But that actually was such a good training because it really shook me to the core of my being. So this is not Mu, that is not Mu. What is Mu? And I was really getting desperate. What was I supposed to think? What I was supposed to do? Who was I? What is Mu? How could I pass through this barrier? And Muman advises on this point and says, concentrate your whole self with its 360 bones and joints and 84,000 pores into Mu, making your whole body a solid lump of doubt. Day and night without ceasing, keep digging into it, but don't take it as nothingness or as being or non-being. It must be like a red-hot iron ball which you have gulped down and which you try to vomit up, but you cannot. You must extinguish all delusive thoughts and feelings which you have cherished to the presence. So you have to drop all ideas about Mu, and you have to drop all ideas about yourself practicing this Mu. Just melting into Mu, letting Mu breathe in, letting Mu breathe out, letting Mu get up, taking a stop, letting Mu walk, letting Mu listen to this talk. So making your body into a whole lump of doubt means that don't ever let go of Mu. Just keep up your attentiveness, your awareness. Pay attention, keep going. And this red hot iron ball, well, it seems like a harsh expression, but Migaku Sato, one of our teachers, says, see it as an image that tells you to think about it, but in a softer way. Think about Mu just as lovers would constantly think about themselves. Or if you know that your child is sick, you would constantly think about your child. So don't ever let Mu get completely aware from your heart and from your consciousness. There is this beautiful Psalm 42 that says, like the deer that yearns for the running streams. So if that you have that yearning, like the deer that yearns for the running streams, yearn in your heart to really have an opening, to really experience Mu, then something can happen. Now, mystics in all religions, of course, have spoken about this necessity for us to let go of all our thoughts and all our ideas about ourselves and about God if we want to experience this ultimate reality. St. John of the Cross, he was a Spanish mystic who lived in the 16th century, wrote about the dark night of the soul, which is a stage of contemplation of samadhi, in which all of our usual ways of thinking and feeling are completely extinguished, completely abandoned. And St. John explains that in order, if you want to reach that stage, which he calls nada, nothing, you have to let go of your intellect, of your memory, and your will. So you have to let go of all these images and notions. You have to let go of past, present, and future, as St. John also says. And he says this is necessary because as soon as you get stuck with something, you stop surrendering yourself to the whole. And if you really want to reach the whole, you have to let go of everything. So does the dog have Buddha nature? No. Is God love or all powerful? Nada. I'll be in Israel in perhaps about 2-3 weeks from now. And St. John, of course, was a Carmelite mystic. And you see this beautiful nada in the Carmelite monastery in Haifa on Mount Carmel. And after every session, I usually go there on Sunday morning just to be in this place and again see this nada of St. John there in the Holy Land, in that church. And it always deeply touches my heart. So, does the dog have Buddha nature? Oh, nada. Muman continues his commentary. So after a certain period of such efforts, Mu will come to fruition and inside out will become one naturally. You will then be like a dumb person who has had a dream, and you will know yourself and for yourself only. So this really important point is inside and outside will become one naturally. So when we really become one with our breath, with Mu, then that inside-outside barrier is completely dissolved. It disappears. And interestingly, there is a passage in the Gospel of Thomas, which also speaks about this state and saying, the kingdom of God is inside and outside of you. But you will be like a dumb person who has had a dream. That's actually the experience I had working with Mu. So after I was practicing at this show, what was the temple called, the Rinzai temple, Shokokuji in Kyoto, I came to retreat with Father LaSalle. And there was one session where I was sitting with this question that I had already uttered in the church. Is God love? Have I really experienced that? And so my practice, those sessions were 7 or 8 days long, and the entire session was, is God love? Mu. Is God love? Mu. Is God love? Mu. And with one sit, there was something like a shift in awareness, or a shift, it's hard to describe these things, but there was a shift in awareness and a shift in, I would say, in the light that I was seeing. And with that moment, I saw everybody sitting in the zendo, the floor of the zendo, the walls of the zendo, everything inside and outside, in a light that's really touched me deeply, so that tears started flowing down my cheeks. And I realized that is the light of love. I may have talked about it before, and if so, excuse me, but it's something that I like to share because I feel in sharing it, it can give some people some assurance that practice can really help us to see things in a new light. And when that happened to me, I was crying because I felt like I had been such a dumb person for such a long time, like a person in a dream not seeing this. And here it was so clearly visible, and I felt like jumping up and shaking everyone on their sitting and saying, don't you see this? You already loved. Why are you sitting here so seriously? And I came with that experience to Father LaSalle and had the answer of Mu and just blurted it out. And he said, yes, that is right. So then my tears just continued to flow, and I had this deep feeling of repentance inside because I hadn't seen this before. So we are like this dumb person who has had a dream. And Mumon continues, when you have that feeling, then Mu all of a sudden will break open and astonish the heavens and shake the earth. It will just be as if you had snatched the great sword of General Khan. If you meet a Buddha, you will kill him. If you meet an ancient Zen master, you will kill him. Though you may stand on the brink of life and death, you will enjoy great freedom. In the 6 rhymes and the 4 modes of birth, you will enjoy the samadhi of innocent play. So all these words, what happens when the self, when the small self is gone? Dogen puts it differently. He says, I came to realize clearly that mind, this true self, is no other than the sun, the moon and the stars, the mountains and the rivers, the great white earth. And that, of course, is the verse which brought Yamada Koan Woshi to deep realization. So all these words in the 4 modes of being and the 6 rhymes, these are the different rhymes described in the Buddhist teachings, from the lowest from hell to Hangbigo's the human rhyme and so on until the divine rhyme. But they don't necessarily have to be places that we imagine as before or after. But as in our human life, I think maybe perhaps on a daily basis, we can experience the hell rhyme to the heaven rhyme. Deep worry, deep unhappiness, and then great joy and exaltation. All of these are changing states of mind that we experience. But with this experience of Mu, the difference is that we don't hold on to them. We are not closed in by them. We experience this great freedom of innocent play. And then if we meet the Buddha, if we meet this concept of enlightenment or Buddha, we push it away, we kill it. If we meet the concept of God, somebody up in the sky, as many people still continue to have that concept, you cut it through. You realize all these treasures are right here in this existence, in this very body. That was Dogen's clear experience. This one body includes everything. There is just one uncompromising oneness, as Yamada Ryon Roshi likes to call it. There's this one body of existence, and this is you right there. Then when you experience that, you always feel home because you have come home to this core of your being, this kokoro, this shin, this wide openness, luminosity, and you can feel this original love that we also speak about, how it really suffuses everything, inside, outside, without any boundary. And this might sound difficult in our daily reality, where we see so much suffering, where there is so much trouble, and yet this is our practice, this joyful true self, which is our true nature. The realization of, what we say, this wonderful heart of nirvana that is always at rest and at the same time active, getting up, sitting down, barking of a dog, singing of the bird, worrying about what I have to do for tomorrow. All of that is it, but you see it with a new light. And this new light liberates you, makes you grateful, makes you want to share that with others. And so when we have this first glimpse of Mu, with all the joy and excitement, it comes in different tones and shades. Not everybody has the same explosive experience. If you expect that, it's probably not going to happen to this one. This is why it's so important in our practice to be attentive, to really enter the samadhi of Mu, as Shifu beautifully said, and to be attentive in that samadhi, to be attentive to what's going on within you so that you don't miss anything like that. So Master Mumon ends this case with a verse, which is simply dog. Buddha nature, perfect manifestation, the absolute command. A little has or has not. Body is lost. Life is lost. So does the dog have Buddha nature? A little. Do I have Buddha nature? Is divine reality love? Is there love? A little has or has not. Life is lost. Body is lost. Getting up, sitting down. Is there any has or has not? Our practice brings us to this place where there is no has or has not. It's way beyond that. And with that comes our liberation. It's beyond yes and no, has and has not, tall or small, wide or narrow. It's beyond all of that. That place of has and has not, where that's completely abundant, let go of. This phase of our place of our original face then manifests itself clearly, even in the little swaying of the leaf outside of my window, which I see right now. The light of the evening sky. You listening to the tea show, and me stopping talking now. A little has or has not. Life is lost. Body is lost. This is a good way to practice also. So please take all these offerings in our practice and take them in great earnesty, in great humility, like Joshu, who practiced for 40 years. Starting with this great trust of faith that Yamada Koan says is one of the 3 pillars, and a great determination. And you will be sure to become enlightened, to awaken. Sure, then you would even hit a hammer with the ground. That's the end of my talk for tonight. And sorry if it got a little bit long.
No, more. Thank you so much, Maria, for that inspiring talk. And I had no idea you would be talking about Mu tonight. It was a tremendous gift. Thank you.
Thank you for being there and listening.
Yeah.
So if there are any questions, I don't know, Scott, how much more time we have, but if somebody
hang around for a while longer, yeah, if you'd like to take some questions. Now, if you're online and have a question, Joe, is there a way for us to hear that, or should we read that? Or if there's a question from somebody on Zoom, can you unmute them?
They can unmute themselves.
Okay.
And just, or they can raise their hand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If everybody online, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand, and Joe will see that, and we'll unmute you at the appropriate time. And here in the Zendo, if anybody would like to ask a question, just grab the mic.
there doesn't have to be a question. So sometimes it's just also good to just sit with silence.
We've got one.
Oh, there was a question. Yeah.
What an incredible talk. That was really, really profound, really enlightening.
Thank you.
I come from a different tradition than Zen Buddhism, and could you give me what you believe that Dharma is? That's my question. What is Dharma?
What is Dharma? Your voice asking the question is Dharma. Your heart pondering the question is Dharma. Does that answer?
Well, I'll think about it. Thank you.
Yes. I see Johanna, am I correct? And Kevin?
Yes, should I go? Johanna.
Yes, Johanna, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria. That was a powerful talk, a lot to sit with.
Thank you.
But I have a kind of a comment. It's not really a question, but I have a kind of a Catholic Christian background, and
Mhm.
I've kind of struggled with, although I'm struggling a lot less now. I've been reading and thinking, and I think kind of bringing the two together,
Mhm.
not so dualistically. But I'm just wondering, I've had the experience of going to communion, Holy Communion, where I feel like that's an absolute sinking into like oomph, like this is it, this is Dharma, this is Mu.
Correct.
Um, a completely non-rational. But does that seem, I mean, I'm not going nuts.
You're not going nuts. In fact, I think you are very sane, and I'm glad that you can see it this way.
It's actually a visceral experience. It's very physical. It's just like, yes.
Yes, I think I've shared the experience where we had a retreat with Father LaSalle in a monastery, and he would just lift up the host, and without the words even of the consecration. And with that lifting up of the host, the whole universe is lifted up, like the Buddha lifted up the flower. So when you see that reality, there is nothing that can ever be excluded, but different religions find a different language to describe this. And so when we practice in more than one tradition, we become translators in a way, and it helps us to see, as Father LaSalle always said, if we enter into the samadhi, and samadhi, the samadhi of mu, or samadhi when we do just sitting, the stilling of our conceptual mind opens up a completely different world, and it opens up our inner wisdom. And this is something that happens beyond words and concepts. And that's why it's so hard to put this reality into words of concept. But if you say you experience it visually and you feel at home in that, then yes, that is certainly Dharma, and that is certainly Mu, one of the countless manifestations. No question about that. And Yamada Roshi always, Yamada Koan Roshi would always say the same thing. So in Kamakura, there would be a zendo where when the Buddhists, many of the Japanese students would have their ceremonies and chants in the lower part of the zendo, then the Christians on Sunday mornings would go up and have their Eucharist upstairs. And Yamada Koan Roshi saw no difference whatsoever in that. But it's perhaps something for theologians to figure out and find the right language to describe these things, which is fine too. But the importance is what the heart sees, not what the mind figures out.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Kevin.
I enjoyed your talk. Got a lot out of it. I am somewhat new to this, and there's a struggle I'm having, and I don't mean to express that like painfully, but there's just a little friction in my effort between kind of the ambition. I hear in your talk kind of an ambition, a desire.
I like the deer longing for the stream. Yeah,
and I feel that, and I like that. I want to be energized by that.
Yes.
But it also seems to conflict with another, I'll call it a lesson, which is don't grasp, don't reach, don't try and become, just be. Which, and I accept all this. I'm just kind of trying to fold them together.
I think longing is not ambition. Ambition is usually connected to a goal. But longing, I don't know if longing has a goal as such. Maybe we are talking about words, but this longing to come home. When you're away from home, you always long to come home, right? But there's no ambition in that. So I would say that's more of the approach. You long to come home, and Mu is the way to come home. So it's quiet sitting and contemplating. Is that helpful?
I'm sorry?
Is that helpful?
That is very helpful. I've always preferred the word longing to ambition or desire. I kind of like that. I like that.
Good. I'm glad. Thank you for the good question, though. So as you all know, Valerie is in Germany, of course, and she's giving a retreat with the koans that Dogen picked up. And in the beginning, I wasn't so sure about what these koans are, because Dogen is associated more with the Soto tradition. But in fact, since he stayed at this temple where the author of the Book of Serenity also was active, he took some of these koans. And I'm just saying that so that you don't think that there is such a big difference between the two approaches. Everything that works is Dharma. You could also put it in that way. And for some people who are really very intellectually active, sometimes a koan is helpful for them. But for people who are naturally contemplative already, and then this quiet illumination may be a practice that they feel more attracted by. But this is something we can also change in the course of our life. So we can start out with koans and then feel maybe for some time I would rather do the quiet illumination or whatever it is. But we are really fortunate that we have so many open roads or open paths for our practice. And yet it is perhaps important to say that consistency is also something that works on the spiritual path. So I hope that you keep up the longing, the great faith or trust, and the gentle persistence to just get up for the practice when you don't feel like it. And I think we all know that feeling, but that's part of the whole deal. So thank you again for being here tonight and for listening. And it's the student who makes the teacher. So thank you for giving me this occasion.
Thank you so much, Maria.